Hello everybody, welcome to this React project. In this one I am going to show you how to create this recipe application, and this is the demo of the finished application. And as you can see, we have these recipes and we can search for any recipes by their names, and we can type any recipes we want, and we're going to get different recipes. And if we come here to any recipes and click here, we are going to see the ingredients. We are going to be taken to this website where you can see more information about the ingredients. And these recipes are coming from an API. This is the documentation of the API, and basically there are different endpoints here, and we are using this one which says search meal by name. And as you can see, with this one we can provide a search query, and if I open this in the browser and change the query, you can see that we are going to get results according to what we are searching for. So without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start by creating a new project. I'm going to use the npx create react app. This is going to take some time, so I will be back once it's finished. Now that we have created a new project, I want to go ahead and do some cleanups for the stuff we don't need. There's a bunch of stuff we don't need. For example, we don't need this logo. We also don't need this web vitals. And also we are not doing tests. So I'm going to get rid of everything we don't need. Now I want to start the development server by running npm start in the terminal, and I also want to come here in app.js and get rid of everything. I am gonna wrap everything in a div with a class name of container. Now I do want to create components for them. This is where we are going to have our components. First, we are going to have the search bar component, and we are also going to have the recipe card component. So let's go ahead and create those. And here in app.js, we need to import those components. I'm gonna import the search bar from components. We also need to import the recipe card from components. Here I am going to implement a basic functional component. I will use arrow functions, and this function is going to take in props as arguments. And for now I want to return a div And I also want to go ahead and export this component. I want to go in the search bar component and implement the same logic. I am going to copy from the recipe card and just change the names from recipe card to search bar. Want to go back in the app.js. Here I want to have a title. I'm going to say our recipe app. And I also want to wrap everything in a div with a class name of container. Now let's go to the documentation and get the endpoint. We are gonna get this one which says search made by name. We can go back and put it in a variable. I'm gonna say API URL. And since we don't need this, we can get rid of it because we are going to provide our keyword. In this application, we are going to use React hooks. So I'm gonna go ahead and import the hooks we are going to need. First, we need the use state and the use effect hooks. With the use state hook, we can create and manipulate the state. And here the first state we are going to need is the loading state. And we will also get a function to manipulate that state, and the default value is going to be false. This will help us keep track of if the application is fetching data or not. And we are also going to need the query, which is going to be the search keyword from the input. And we are also going to need the state for the recipes, because when you fetch recipes, we want to store them in the state as well. Here I want to have a function that is going to fetch data from the API, and it is going to call the API and fetch the recipes according to the search query. I'm going to use an arrow function, and it is going to be an asynchronous function so that we can use await keyword in our function. First, I want to set the state to is loading to true. I want to set this is loading state to true, and I want to make a request to the URL which contains the search query. So I'm gonna add the API URL to the search query, and then I'm going to make a request using the fetch API. I will use the await keyword so that we wait for the response, and from this response I am going to get the JSON data. This will give us the recipes, and with these recipes we can set the state. In fact, we are going to get meals, so we are going to use this one to set our recipes, and after that we are going to set the is loading state to false after fetching the data. And what we can do with this use effect hook, we can call our function when our application loads. And for now, let's console log the data so that we can see what's coming from the API. Want to open the developer tools and see what we are getting, and as you can see, we are getting a bunch of recipes. And now with these recipes we can display them. I am going to put these recipes in a div. They are going to have a class name of recipes, and I can use the map function. First, I want to check if I have recipes, and if I have recipes, I can use the map function to render these recipes. And I am going to use the recipe card component we created. And as you know, for an array, we need to pass and this is going to have the key, as you know, when we are rendering. And you also we need to pass in the key as props, and we also need to pass the recipe as well. And if we don't have any recipes, we can say that no recipes. We can display this text. Let's go in the browser. Need to now in this recipe card component, we are going to give it a class name of card so that you can style it. And in the props, we are going to get the recipe, and from this recipe we can get a bunch of stuff. We can get the meal, the string meal, which is the title of the meal, and you can get the category. And you can also get the thumbnail of the recipe. I want to display the image. The source is going to be the meal thumbnail. It's also going to have the class name of card. Now I want to put the remaining stuff in the div with a class name of card body. And first I want to have the category. I'm going to use a span tag. It's going to have a class name of class name category. And you can use the category we are getting from the recipe. And I want to have the title of the recipe. And finally, I want to link to the website or where we can get more information about the ingredients. Actually going to use the idea, and you want to open this in a new tab, so you can use this target and set it to blank. And now let's go back in the browser and see what we have. And as you can see, we have these recipes with these images. Now what I want to do next is to come in app.css and start writing styles for our application. First, I am going to get rid of everything here, and I want to start by setting styles for the whole elements. And I want to start with the font family, and also I want to set the box sizing to border box. I want to continue with the container class. I want to give it a background color, which is going to be like a white color. And I also want to set the maximum width to 1000 pixels. And I also want to set the minimum height to the 100 view height. And I also want to give it a margin. And finally, I want to set the border radius to 20 pixels. I want to style the title of our application, and this one is using a H2 HTML tag. So, and I want to align the text in the center. And now I want to go ahead and style the recipes, I mean the container of all recipes. I'm going to use Flexbox so that I can align everything. I can put everything in the center. I'm going to use the justify content element to make sure everything is centered. And I also want to give it a margin of 20 pixels on the top. And I want to style the recipe card. This has a class name of card. And I want to make sure it is 200 pixels. And I also want to give it a background color. I mean a white background color. And also a margin of 10 pixels. I also want to give it a border radius of 5 pixels and set the padding bottom to 10 pixels. Now I want to style the image of the recipe. So this one is going to take 100% of the width. And you say this is looking good. Actually, I was supposed to give the card a white background color. And now I want to style the body of the recipe. This is where we have the text, I mean the title, the category. And I want to give it a padding of 10 pixels. And I also want to align the text in the center. and I want to style the category. It has a class name of category. I just want to give it an orange color. And finally, I want to style the link. And actually this orange color, I want to use it for the link and use a different color for the category. And for the link, I want to inherit the color. I want to give it some padding. And I also want to set the radius of the border to 10 pixels. And I also want to make sure there is no text decoration. And actually I want to go back in the container class and also set the padding to 10 pixels. And as you can see, our application is looking better. So now we want to have a form where we can have an input for searching the recipes. I mean, where we can provide the search query. And I am going to come here and render the search bar component. And I want to create a function that will handle the submission of the form. So when we submit the form in the search bar, we want to run this handle submit function, and this is going to take in the event, and with this event we can prevent the page from reloading. We do not want that. And when we submit the form, we want to search for recipes. We want to call that function again. And here in the props, we can pass in the handle submit function as a prop. And we also want to set the state when the search input changes. And the way we are going to do this is by passing the onChange prop, and this is going to set the search query to the target value using the event. And we also want to pass the isLoading state as a prop. And we also want to pass in the search query as the value in the props. And what we can do here, we can come here and get these props in the search bar component. Gonna get the value, isLoading, handle submit, and finally we are going to get the onChange function. I want this component to return a form, and this form is going to have the onSubmit prop, and we are passing in the handle submit function. And in this form, we are going to have an input field, and this is where we can type our search query, and it's going to take in the value as prop, and we are also giving it a class name of form control so that we can style this later. And it's also going to have a placeholder of such recipes. and this is going to be disabled when our application is fetching data from the API. And we also want to change the state when the input changes. So we want to call the onChange function when the input changes. And finally, we are going to have a button, and it's going to be an input tag with the type of submit. This is going to submit our form. It is also going to have a class name of button. And it's going to have the search as the text. This button is going to be disabled as well when fetching data. I mean, when the application is fetching data from the API. And it is also going to be disabled when we don't have any input. I mean, when there is no input in the search query. And we can test this in the browser, and as you can see, we can search for the recipes and get results. Now that the search bar is working, we can go back in app.css and style the search bar as well. And I want to start here. I do want to start with the form. I also want to use the flexbox to make sure that everything is centered in the middle. And I also want to give it a width of 100%. And I would use the justify content to make sure everything is centered in the middle. And for the input fields, I want to set the border to 1 pixel and also give it a color. And for the padding, I will use 10 pixels. And for the font size, it's going to be 16 pixels. And I want to remove the outline when I focus on the input. I mean, when I am typing, I don't want to see the outline. And for the form control class, which is the actual input, I mean the search query input, I am going to set the border radius. And the way I am setting the border radius, like I am using different borders. And for the width, I want it to be 400 pixels. And finally, I want to style the button, and it's also going to have the button is also going to have the same styles for the border. And I also want to change the cursor to the pointer. And now I want to go back in the browser and refresh. And as you can see, our search bar is looking good. and the app is working as expected. Alright guys, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.